Dr. Villani Thross pressed her long fingers against the control panel as warning lights flashed red across the research station. The peaceful morning had turned into a nightmare in minutes. Through the thick windows of the observation deck, she could see the dark ships approaching like hungry predators. The Kelvari scientist had spent 3 years studying the gas clouds around Nexus Prime. Her team discovered new forms of energy that could change how the galaxy traveled between stars. It was the greatest find of her career. Now it might be her last. "Doctor, they are jamming all our signals," called her assistant from across the room. His voice shook with fear. "The defense grid is offline. We cannot call for help." Villani watched. The alien ships moved closer. She knew what they were. Everyone in this part of the galaxy knew about the Zephyr Collective. They took what they wanted and enslaved anyone who got in their way. Her research station had no weapons and no military protection. The Council said this area was safe. The Council was wrong. The first blast hit the station's outer ring. Villani felt the floor shake under her feet. Emergency alarms screamed through the corridors. Her team ran past the windows trying to reach the escape pods. But Villani knew the truth. The Zephyr ships would catch any pod that launched. There was nowhere to run. She looked at the communication panel one more time. Most of the systems were dead, but the long-range transmitter still had power. Maybe she could send one message before they cut the power completely. Villani's fingers moved quickly across the controls. She set the transmitter to broadcast on all frequencies across the galaxy. Someone had to hear this. Someone had to know what happened here. "This is Dr. Villani Thross of Kelvari Research Station 7, she spoke into the microphone. "We are under attack by Zephyr Collective forces. They are taking our research and our people. If anyone receives this message, please help us. Please remember that we tried to make the galaxy a better place." The transmission went out just as another blast shook the station. The lights went out for a moment, then came back dim and flickering. Villani could hear the Zephyr soldiers breaking through the airlocks. Soon, they would be here. Far across the galaxy, Captain Jake Murphy sat in his command chair aboard the USS Valiant. The human warship moved slowly through space on routine patrol. Murphy drank his coffee and read reports from the other ships in his fleet. It was a quiet day, the kind he usually enjoyed. Then the communication officer turned around, with a surprised look on his face. "Captain, we are getting a distress call," the young man said. "It is on all frequencies, very weak signal." Murphy set down his coffee cup. "Put it on speakers." The voice that came through was alien, but the words were clear. Murphy had heard enough distress calls to know real terror when he heard it. This was not a drill or a false alarm. Someone was dying out there. "Where is it coming from?" Murphy asked. "The Nexus Prime system, sir. About 6 hours away at maximum speed." Murphy thought for a moment. Nexus Prime was not in human space. The Galactic Council had rules about entering other species' territory without permission, but the rules also said that all civilized beings should help others in danger. "Get me Admiral Carter," Murphy said. The main screen flickered and Admiral Lisa Carter appeared. She was aboard the USS Liberty, the largest ship in the human fleet. Carter was known throughout the Navy as someone who made quick decisions and stuck with them. "I heard the transmission, Jake," Carter said before Murphy could speak. "What do you think?" "I think someone needs help and we are close enough to provide it," Murphy replied. Carter nodded. "I agree. How many ships do we have in the area?" Commander Ryan Blake, Murphy's tactical officer, checked his displays. 12 heavy cruisers, 36 destroyers, and the Liberty with her fighter wings. Full battle group, Admiral. "That seems like a lot for a rescue mission," Carter said with a small smile. "But better to have too much firepower than too little. Jake, take your ships and see what we are dealing with. I will follow with the main fleet." Murphy stood up from his command chair. Around him, the bridge crew began working faster. They all knew what this meant. The human fleet was going to war. "Chief Sullivan," Murphy called to his chief engineer, "how fast can we get to Nexus Prime?" Kate Sullivan looked up from her console. "If we push the engines past safety limits, we can be there in 4 hours, Captain." "Do it, and prepare for combat operations." Murphy walked to the front of the bridge and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, people were suffering. Though Galactic Council might not approve of humans entering the area without permission, other species might think Earth was trying to expand its territory. Murphy did not care about politics. His species came from a world that tried to kill them every day. They learned early that when someone called for help, you answered. It did not matter if they were human or alien, friend or stranger. The USS Valiant and her sister ships turned toward Nexus Prime. Behind them, Admiral Carter's battle group followed. The humans were coming, and they were bringing everything they had. In the Nexus Prime system, the Zephyr Collective continued their attack on the research station. Fleet Admiral Zexthor watched his soldiers board the station and take prisoners. The research data would make his people rich, and the slaves would work in their mines. Zexthor did not know that someone had answered the distress call. He did not know that a fleet of warships was racing toward his position. Most importantly, he did not know that these ships belonged to a species the galaxy called Deathworlders. He was about to learn why that name made other aliens afraid. The human fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving streaks of light behind them as they disappeared into the void. They were coming to help no matter what the cost. That was what humans did. That was what made them different from everyone else in the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Zexthor stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his soldiers work. The Kelvari research station was almost completely under his control. His troops had captured most of the scientists and were downloading their research data. Soon he would have everything he came for. The Zephyr commander felt proud of his easy victory. The Kelvari had no weapons and no allies nearby. Their distress call had gone out to empty space. No one would come to help them because no one was close enough to matter. "Admiral, we have secured the main laboratory," reported one of his officers. "The research on energy manipulation is even better than our spies told us. This will make us the most powerful fleet in the sector." Zexthor smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Excellent. Begin moving the prisoners to the slave ships. We will take everything valuable and destroy the rest." Around the gas giant, 43 Zephyr warships moved in lazy patterns. They were not worried about attack. Their intelligence said the nearest military force was weeks away. The Galactic Council had no ships in this area. The humans were too far away to matter. Zexthor had heard stories about the humans. Other commanders whispered that they came from a death world and fought like demons. But the Zephyr Admiral did not believe in ghost stories. Humans were just another weak species trying to look dangerous. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The first sign of trouble came from the sensor operator. "Admiral, I am detecting ships dropping out of hyperspace at the system edge." Zexthor turned to look at the tactical display. 12 red dots appeared on the screen, moving fast toward the inner system. Then more dots appeared. 36 smaller, ships followed by one massive vessel. "What species?" Zexthor asked. The sensor operator checked his readings twice before answering. "Sir, they are flying human flags." For a moment, Zexthor felt a cold touch of fear. Then his pride took over. Humans might have fierce reputations, but they were still outnumbered. He had 43 ships against their 49. The odds were almost even. "All ships, form battle formation," Zexthor ordered. "Prepare to destroy these Deathworlders." Captain Jake Murphy watched the enemy fleet move into position on his main screen. The Zephyr ships were larger than most human vessels, but Murphy was not worried about size. His crew had trained for this moment their entire careers. "Distance to target?" Murphy asked. 2 million kilometers and closing," replied Commander Blake. "Enemy fleet is forming a defensive wall around the research station. They think they can hide behind the civilians," Murphy said quietly. That was a mistake. The communication system crackled to life. Admiral Carter's voice came through clear and strong. "All ships, this is Liberty Actual. Form attack formation. Delta 7, prepare for immediate engagement." Around the USS Valiant, the human fleet moved like a living thing. The heavy cruisers took point positions while the destroyers spread out in a wide arc. The massive carrier Liberty hung back, but Murphy could see fighter squadrons launching from her bays. "Sir, the enemy commander is trying to contact us," reported the communication officer. Murphy nodded. "Put him through." The main screen changed to show Fleet Admiral Zexthor. The alien looked confident and aggressive. Murphy had seen that look before on other enemies. It usually did not last long. "Human vessel," Zexthor said with a sneer. "You are entering Zephyr space without permission. Leave now, or face destruction." Murphy stood up from his command chair. His voice was calm and cold when he replied, "You have 30 seconds to withdraw from this system or face the consequences." Zexthor laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound. "You think you can threaten me, Deathworlder? I have 43 warships. You are outnumbered and outgunned." 29 seconds, Murphy said without changing expression. The Zephyr Admiral's laugh grew louder. "Your reputation is just stories told by cowards. We will add your ships to our fleet and sell your crews in the slave markets." 15 seconds. Zexthor opened his mouth to speak again, but Murphy cut the transmission. The main screen returned to tactical display showing both fleets facing each other across empty space. "All ships, this is Captain Murphy," he broadcast on the fleet frequency. "We came here to help innocent people. The enemy thinks we are bluffing. Show them how wrong they are." Commander Blake's fingers moved across his tactical controls. "Weapons armed and ready, Captain. All ships report ready for combat." Murphy looked at the countdown timer on his screen. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Fire. What happened next would be talked about in military academies across the galaxy for generations. The human fleet did not just attack, they unleashed hell itself. Every ship fired at once. Missile streams launched from the destroyers, while the heavy cruisers opened up with their main guns. Energy beams cut through space like swords of light. The fighters from the Liberty dove toward the enemy fleet in attack formations that defied every rule of space combat. The Zephyr ships tried to return fire, but they were not ready for the speed and fury of the human assault. Their defensive formation shattered as human ships moved through it like sharks through a school of fish. Murphy watched his tactical display with satisfaction. His ships were performing exactly as trained. The humans did not fight like other species. They did not worry about taking damage or losing ships. They attacked with the fury of a species that had learned to survive on a world that tried to kill them every day. "Enemy formation is breaking apart," Commander Blake reported. "Multiple ships showing heavy damage." "Continue the attack," Murphy ordered. "No mercy for slavers." The battle was just beginning, but already the outcome was clear. The Zephyr Collective had made a fatal error. They had challenged the Deathworlders, and now they would pay the price for their arrogance. The space around Nexus Prime turned into a storm of fire and metal. Human missiles streaked across the darkness like angry stars, while energy beams cut through Zephyr ships like hot knives through butter. What the aliens thought would be an easy fight became their worst nightmare in seconds. Fleet Admiral Zexthor gripped his command chair as his flagship shook from multiple hits. Around him, his bridge crew shouted damage reports that got worse by the second. Half his fleet was already burning, and the humans had barely started fighting. "How are they moving so fast?" Zexthor screamed at his tactical officer. The young alien's hands shook as he worked his controls. "Sir, their ships are pulling maneuvers that should kill their crews. No living being can survive those forces." But the humans were not just surviving. They were thriving. Captain Murphy's USS Valiant spun through space in a dance of destruction that made other species sick just to watch. The ship twisted and turned at speeds that would crush normal aliens against their walls, but the human crew kept fighting like nothing was wrong. "Target their command ship," Murphy ordered. "Show them what happens when they threaten civilians." Commander Blake locked the main guns onto Zexthor's flagship, the massive weapons charged with enough power to crack a moon in half. When they fired, the energy beam punched straight through the Zephyr ship's shields like they were made of paper. On the enemy bridge, explosions threw Zexthor to the floor. Half his control panels went dark, and he could smell smoke filling the air. Through the chaos, he heard his communication officer screaming into his headset. "All ships, retreat! Fall back to safe distance!" But there was no safe distance from the human fleet. Admiral Carter's ships moved through space like hunting wolves, chasing down every enemy vessel that tried to run. The human fighters were even worse. They flew in formations that ignored every law of physics other species had to follow. Lieutenant Sam Harris pulled his fighter through a turn that created 8 times normal gravity. His body felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, but he stayed, conscious, and kept firing. Behind him, his wingman Jenny Brooks followed in perfect formation, her weapons tearing apart a Zephyr destroyer that thought it could escape. "This is Wolf, leader," Harris called over the radio. "Enemy squadron trying to reach hyperspace, moving to intercept." "Copy, Wolf, leader," came Admiral Carter's voice from the Liberty. "Show them why we are called Deathworlders." Harris smiled inside his helmet and pushed his fighter even faster. The Zephyr pilots ahead of him were good, but they came from a light gravity world where such speeds would kill them instantly. Harris came from Earth, where every day was a fight against a planet that wanted him dead. The enemy fighters never had a chance. On the USS Valiant, Chief Engineer Kate Sullivan watched her displays with fierce joy. The ship's engines were running at 120% of safe limits, but she was not worried. Human ships were built tough because humans lived on a world that broke everything weak. "Give me more power to the forward guns, Captain," Murphy called over the intercom. "You got it, Captain," Sullivan replied, rerouting energy from systems other species would never dare to touch. The lights dimmed on the bridge, but the weapons got stronger. Murphy felt his ship respond like a living thing. Around him, the battle continued to rage, but it was no longer a fight. It was a demonstration. The humans were showing the galaxy what happened when someone threatened innocent people. Commander Blake's tactical display showed the truth in cold numbers. 37 Zephyr ships were destroyed or disabled. Only 6 remained in fighting condition, and they were trying desperately to escape. The human fleet had not lost a single vessel. "Sir, the enemy flagship is requesting surrender," the communication officer reported. Murphy looked at the main screen where Zexthor's ship limped through space, trailing atmosphere and debris. Part of him wanted to finish the job and destroy every last enemy ship, but that was not why they came here. "Open a channel," Murphy ordered. Zexthor appeared on screen, his uniform torn and his face bleeding from the explosions on his bridge. The arrogant commander who had laughed at human threats now looked like a broken old man. "Please," Zexthor whispered. "We surrender. Have mercy." Murphy stared at the alien for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was hard as steel. "You came here to steal and enslave innocent people. You showed them no mercy. Why should we show you any? We will leave," Zexthor begged. "We will never return to this system. Please do not destroy us." Murphy thought about the Kelvari scientists trapped on the research station. He thought about all the other worlds the Zephyr Collective had attacked over the years. Then he made his decision. "You have 1 hour to collect your surviving ships and leave this system," Murphy said. "If we ever see you attacking civilians again, we will hunt you down and finish what we started today. Do you understand?" Zexthor nodded quickly. Yes, we understand. Thank you for your mercy." Murphy cut the transmission and turned to his crew. "All ships, maintain defensive positions around the research station. Prepare rescue teams to help the survivors." Around the gas giant, the remaining Zephyr ships gathered their dead and wounded before jumping to hyperspace. They fled like beaten dogs, carrying news of their defeat to every corner of their territory. The battle was over in 47 minutes. The human fleet had faced superior numbers and won without losing a single ship. They had shown the galaxy that some lines should never be crossed. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, other predators heard the news and began to wonder if maybe they should find easier prey than the worlds protected by Deathworlders. The research station looked like a broken toy floating in space. Holes punched through its hull leaked air and debris into the void. Emergency lights flickered weakly through cracked windows. Dr. Villani Thross huddled with her surviving team, members in the main laboratory wondering if they would live to see another day. Then she heard something impossible. Footsteps in the corridor outside. Heavy, rhythmic steps that did not belong to Zephyr soldiers. A voice called out in accented galactic standard, "Hello? Anyone alive in there? This is Sergeant Mike Chen. Earth Marines. We are here to help. Vellani could not believe her ears. Earth Marines? The Deathworlders had actually come? She pressed. The door released and the damaged portal slid open with a grinding sound. The being that stepped through was unlike anything she had ever seen up close. Sergeant Chen stood over 2 meters tall, wearing powered armor that made him look like a walking tank. But his voice was gentle when he spoke. "Ma'am, are you Dr. Thross? We got your distress call. How many survivors do you have?" 15 of us made it to this section, Vellani said, her voice shaking with relief. But there are more people trapped in the outer rings. The Zephyr took some of our team to their ships. We already got your people back from the enemy vessels, Chen said. Captain Murphy made sure of that before he let them leave. Now we need to get you all to safety. Vellani watched in amazement as more human Marines moved through the station. These warriors who had just destroyed an entire enemy fleet now worked with incredible care to rescue wounded aliens. They carried medical equipment and cutting tools, moving through the damaged corridors like they had trained for this their entire lives. Dr. Thross, called another Marine, a woman with sergeant stripes on her armor. We found 3 more survivors in Section 7, but they are trapped under debris. Can you tell us about their biology? We do not want to hurt them when we dig them out. The kindness in the human's voice made Vellani want to cry. These beings were supposed to be monsters, Deathworlders who solved problems with violence. Instead, they worried about hurting aliens while saving their lives. Back on the USS Valiant, Captain Murphy walked through the medical bay with Dr. Sam Torres. The ship's chief medical officer was treating wounded Kelvari with the same care he would show human patients. His instruments were designed for different species, and he worked carefully to help beings whose biology was completely alien to him. How are they doing, Doc? Murphy asked quietly. Better than expected, Torres replied, checking on a young Kelvari whose arm had been broken in the attack. Their physiology is fascinating, much more fragile than humans, but they heal faster once. The damage is stabilized. Murphy nodded and moved to the next bed where Dr. Thross was being treated for cuts and bruises. She looked up at him with large golden eyes full of gratitude. Captain Murphy, she said, I cannot thank you enough for what you have done. You saved us all. Just doing our job, ma'am, Murphy replied. Though I have to ask, what kind of research were you doing out here? The Zephyr seemed very interested in your work. Vellani glanced around the medical bay, then leaned closer to speak quietly. We discovered a new form of energy manipulation. It could revolutionize space travel, make it faster and cheaper than ever before. The Zephyr wanted to steal it and use it for their war fleets. Murphy felt a chill run down his spine. If the Zephyr had succeeded, they could have attacked any world in the galaxy without warning. The implications were staggering. We will make sure your research stays safe, Murphy promised. Admiral Carter will want to talk to you about this. Across the galaxy, news of the battle at Nexus Prime spread like wildfire. In the halls of the Galactic Council, emergency sessions were called as representatives tried to understand what had happened. The humans had destroyed a major Zephyr fleet in less than an hour, rescued civilians, and then simply resumed their patrols like nothing unusual had occurred. Ambassador Helen Wright sat in the council chambers, fielding questions from dozens of alien representatives who suddenly wanted to know everything about human military capabilities. They had ignored Earth for years, treating humans like dangerous barbarians who should be contained in their own space. Now those same representatives begged for protection agreements and mutual defense treaties. Ambassador Wright called the He, vegan delegate, his multiple arms waving frantically. Our merchant ships travel near Zephyr space. Can your fleet provide escort services? The Altarian colonies have been threatened by raiders, added another representative. We formally request human assistance. Wright listened to the requests with barely hidden amusement. A year ago, these same beings had voted to restrict human expansion because they feared Earth's military would destabilize the region. Now they could not sign treaties fast enough. The United Earth government will consider all formal requests for assistance, Wright replied diplomatically. But I should remind the Council that our actions at Nexus Prime were purely humanitarian. We answered, a distress call, nothing more. The Centauri ambassador leaned forward, his expression serious. Ambassador, with respect, what we witnessed was not just humanitarian aid. Your fleet demonstrated tactical capabilities that exceed anything in our databases. The galactic balance of power has shifted. Wright nodded slowly. The alien was right, though she would never admit it publicly. Humanity had tried for decades to gain respect through diplomacy and trade. In 47 minutes of combat, they had accomplished more than years of careful negotiation. Meanwhile, in the darker corners of the galaxy, other predatory species watched the news feeds with growing concern. The Zephyr Collective had been one of the strongest military forces in the sector. If the humans could destroy them so easily, what did that mean for other expansion plans? Fleet commanders canceled raids on defenseless worlds. Pirate chiefs looked for easier targets far from human space. The galaxy had learned a simple lesson. There were consequences for threatening innocents when Deathworlders were watching. Back on the research station, Dr. Thross stood in her repaired laboratory, watching human engineers work to restore her equipment. They handled the delicate instruments with surprising gentleness for beings from such a harsh world. "Doctor," called Sergeant Chen, "we have finished evacuating the wounded. Do you want to stay here or transfer to one of our ships?" Vellani looked around at her life's work, then at the humans who had saved it. "I think I would like to visit Earth someday," she said. "I want to see the world that creates people like you." Chen smiled behind his helmet. "Ma'am, I think you would like it there. Just remember to pack heavy clothes. Our gravity takes some getting used to." As the human fleet prepared to resume patrol, word continued to spread across the galaxy. The Deathworlders had spoken, and the universe would never be the same. 3 months after the battle at Nexus Prime, the galaxy looked very different. Admiral Jake Murphy stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the USS Guardian, watching patrol ships move through the Kepler sector. His promotion had come with new responsibilities and a much larger fleet to command. "Sir, we have another request for protection," reported his communication officer. "The Rigel colonies want us to escort their mining ships through the asteroid belt." Murphy nodded. It was the 4th request this week. Ever since word spread about what happened to the Zephyr Collective, every peaceful species in the galaxy wanted human protection. They offered trade agreements, technology exchanges, and anything else they thought might interest Earth. "Tell them we will consider it," Murphy said. "Add it to the list for Admiral Carter to review." The list was getting very long. 23 star systems had formally requested human military presence. 15 species had offered full alliance treaties. Even the proud Centauri, who had never asked anyone for help, quietly sent messages asking about joint patrol operations. On the planet Vega Prime, Dr. Vellani Thross walked through the halls of the new Interspecies Research Institute. Her work on energy manipulation had made her famous across the galaxy. But she used that fame for something more important. The institute brought together scientists from dozens of worlds to share knowledge and work for peace. Dr. Thross called her new assistant, a young human named Kevin Park. "The council representatives are here for the presentation." Vellani smiled. 6 months ago, most council members would not even meet with her. Now they came to her laboratory asking for briefings on the latest research. The change had nothing to do with her work and everything to do with the humans who had saved her life. In the main conference room, delegates from 20 different species listened as Vellani explained her latest discoveries. Her research could make space travel 10 times faster and 100 times cheaper. But she had learned to be careful about who got access to such powerful technology. "The human government has agreed to help us establish research stations in neutral space," Vellani told the gathering. "Any species that signs the peace accords can participate in the program." The peace accords were Admiral Carter's idea. Any species that promised to stop attacking civilian targets could join the research program and receive human protection. Most of the galaxy had signed within weeks of hearing about it. On Earth, in the halls of the United Nations, Ambassador Helen Wright read reports from across human space. The Zephyr Collective had collapsed completely, their former territories declaring independence or joining peaceful alliances. 3 other aggressive species had quietly abandoned their expansion plans and started negotiating trade agreements. Instead, "Helen, you need to see this," said General Robert Kim, the military liaison to the diplomatic corps. He handed her a datapad with intelligence reports from the Outer Rim. Wright read quickly, her eyebrows rising with each paragraph. "The Andorian raiders disbanded. The Void Hunters are requesting mediation talks. This is incredible." "It gets better," Kim said with a grin. "Our intelligence suggests that at least 6 major pirate fleets have moved their operations to the far side of the galaxy, as far from human space as they can get." Wright shook her head in amazement. For decades, Earth had tried to gain respect through careful diplomacy and peaceful trade. 47 minutes of combat had accomplished more than 50 years of negotiations. Meanwhile, in the Nexus Prime system, the research station had been rebuilt and expanded. It now hosted scientists from across the galaxy, all working together under human protection. Commander Ryan Blake, now Captain Blake, commanded the defense fleet that kept the system safe. "Captain, we have a situation," reported his tactical officer. "Unknown ships approaching the system edge." Blake sat up in his command chair. "How many ships?" "Just 3, sir. They are broadcasting hegemony identification codes." Blake frowned. The hegemony was one of the few remaining aggressive species that had not signed the peace accords. They controlled a small empire on the far side of the galaxy and usually avoided human space. "Put them on screen," Blake ordered. The alien that appeared looked nervous and uncomfortable. "Human vessel, this is Commander Vex of the Hegemony Navy. We request permission to speak with your leadership." "State your business," Blake replied coldly. "We wish to discuss terms for joining your peace accords," Vex said quickly. "The Hegemony Council has decided that our previous policies were unwise." Blake hid his smile. Another predator species had decided that picking fights with Deathworlders was a bad idea. "Stand by for escort to the diplomatic station." As the hegemony ships were guided to a safe orbit, Blake reflected on how much had changed. The galaxy was becoming a safer place, not through conquest or threats, but because aggressive species were learning that there were consequences for their actions. In the outer darkness between stars, Chief Engineer Kate Sullivan monitored long-range sensors from her new position aboard the USS Liberty. Admiral Carter had promoted her to Chief of Fleet Engineering, responsible for keeping hundreds of ships in perfect working order. "Ma'am, we are picking up another distress signal," reported one of her technicians. Sullivan looked at the display. The signal was weak and far away, from a system she had never heard of. Another desperate call for help from beings under attack by predators who thought they could take whatever they wanted. "Alert Admiral Carter," Sullivan said. "Looks like someone else needs the Deathworlders." She smiled as she began plotting the fastest route to the source of the signal. Somewhere out there, innocent people were in danger. The human fleet would answer their call, just like they always did. It was what made them different from everyone else in the galaxy. The USS Liberty and her escort ships changed course toward the new crisis. Behind them, dozens of other human vessels continued their patrols, keeping trade routes safe and protecting the weak from those who would harm them. The galaxy had learned its lesson. When someone called for help, the Deathworlders answered. And they answered with overwhelming force, unwavering determination, and the absolute certainty that protecting innocence was always worth the cost. The age of unchecked aggression was over. The age of human protection had begun.